Hello, this is Jean-Éric Hainaut for CGS Television. I'm here with Albert Lozano from Pixar, who recently completed work on the film Inside Out. As an art director, you designed the characters, I believe.
Yes, I did.
And what is the look you were looking for in Inside Out?
Well, the look that we were sort of going after was just something that felt like raw emotions. And so we start off very simple. We thought, anger just feels very square and rigid, so we would stay, pretty primary with this color, making it red, but just making him a box, staying in a box. And joy kind of felt like exploding in all directions, so we wanted to hearken to that. So we thought, well, we'd be influenced by the star shape and make her yellow. So we tried to stay very clear that these are emotions, not people, and we just had a lot of fun with that.
How about the colors, the palette you were using?
Oh yeah, that was pretty. I don't want to call it easy, but it's very primary. Like anger, you think of red, and with sad, you think of tears, and so we made it blue. Disgust, we thought of things like broccoli, just things that you're grossed out by tend to be green. So we thought you'd make her green. So that was a pretty easy assignment as far as choosing which color each emotion would be.
Makes sense. How are the main characters designed beyond the shapes? You talked about the
Oh yeah.
colors and, for example, the textures. Also, I've noticed, for example, the characters have this like sugar-coated skin. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, so the idea was that they would actually be made of particles, and because they're not flesh and bone, we thought emotions feel like energy, and so if you bound all these particles and they were sort of tethered together by just their energy, they could sort of move around and those particles would behave kind of in correlation with what the emotion was. So with joy, they would just explode in all different directions. And if it was sadness, those particles that she was made of would maybe just fall off. It was really slow to the ground and sort of behave like a waterfall, possibly.
Okay. How do you know, character design goes through many stages of approval, you change your mind. So how do you know when the character design is finally final?
When the director says so. And even then, sometimes it's not final. Sometimes there are story changes that happen, and then you have to go back and retweak the design. But it's never final. I like to say it's not finished until the film is actually out in the theaters.
Can you give us an example where a character doesn't look at all the way it started?
Oh yeah, most of them are that way. For example, with Joy, when we started off, I really was just pushing on making her a very simple star shape, and of course we had to have things like eyes and then a mouth because you're going to have acting and things involved, and then we had limbs. Then she was going to need hands, and so the evolution of Joy went through a very the evolution was just, it took her away from that very simple shape to being a little bit more human, yet we always try to pull back and remind ourselves that she is this joyful star shape, and so just always trying to be aware of that. She did change a lot, but I think we landed in a very good place with her, even though she changed quite a bit.
And also during the film, there's a sequence. I think it's called abstract thinking. That must have been kind of crazy for you guys.
Yes, in fact, that's the weird sequence, and it was also a lot of fun. It's the sequence that I was really waiting to get my hands on, and it was the very last assignment that I had on the film. It was kind of like having my dessert at the very end, I like to tell people, because it was a lot of fun, and it was very different and unique and challenging.
How does the design of a character relates to the casting? What does happen first? You cast the voice first, or you cast in relation to the design of the character?
That changes often. Sometimes we have a specific actor in mind. Anger, for example, we sort of knew we wanted Lewis Black from the very beginning. He was our inspiration for that character from the get-go. Whereas Sadness, it took a while to figure her out, and we didn't have Phyllis in mind until maybe about halfway through the design process. And once we found Phyllis, the rest just sort of fell into place. The design got a lot stronger because of her, but we didn't have her at the very beginning. So sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. There's no scientific method for it.
Is it by accident?
Sometimes it is, yes. Yeah, sometimes it is by accident. You try to think of the purpose of the character within the film, so you do have a purpose, but sometimes you just happen upon things that fit right in, and you're surprised by those things. You just have to allow the space for that to happen.
I've read somewhere that one of the characters in a previous interview, that one of the characters you had the most difficulty with was Sadness. Why is that?
Oh yeah, because the take on sadness very early on was sort of thinking of sadness as depression. And she just felt too depressed, and it was hard to relate to the character. The reason why was just, we thought of just sadness. You don't want to get out of bed. You're just really mopey. It was just really hard to like that character at the very beginning when we were in those early stages. But then once we found Phyllis, the adjective sort of became more empathy. And with empathy, you can sort of relate to that. Empathy in itself just makes you very relatable, and it just made her so much more appealing by taking sadness to a more empathy area. Yeah, that was very key.
You've designed many characters over the years, and this is a tricky question. Have you ever based any of your characters on a Pixar employee?
Gosh, off the top of my head, let me think. Actually, no. Yes. In fact, well,
And who?
not directly, but then sometimes when you're describing a quality, for instance, the mom character in Inside Out, we wanted you to believe in the film. We knew that we were going to have this scene at the dinner sequence where she was possibly once in love with a Brazilian helicopter pilot, and then how does she end up marrying this guy who became just sort of like a dot-com entrepreneur? That's a wide tip of the needle. And so when we were designing her, we tried some personality traits. There was a specific coworker who kind of embodied this trait. It's like, yeah, you could imagine her going really crazy or just staying, a little bit more conservative with her life. And she landed somewhere in the middle. She had that quality. And so when I was pitching that character, I used that employee as a reference.
Does she know about it?
She does now, yes. At the time, no, she didn't know about it.
That's hilarious. Since the movie has been released, what is the perception you've received from the public? I mean, anything personal that you've received as feedback?
Oh yeah, I mean the response has been overwhelming, and I've been really happy just with the response. When you release a film, you don't quite know. You've worked on it for so long, you don't know whether it's good or bad. You're too close to it, and then when you release it and the world just accepts it, it's just been a really overwhelming response. And I really appreciate the fact that people are telling me things that they're getting out of the film that I had hoped for from the very beginning. And we didn't know how to get there, but the fact that we landed there and the film is resonating with people, it's a really exciting thing to have happen.
Well, thank you very much. It was an amazing movie, and I really enjoyed it, and everybody I talked to loved it. So thank you very much. This was Albert Lozano for CGS TV.